Hey, Jonathan and Sarah. Yeah, I'm here in Tuscaloosa. We are at the park at Manderson Landing. It is right along the Tuscaloosa Riverwalk. And honestly, if you were to look around me right now, I would say this is the quintessential calm before the storm because, quite frankly, nothing's happening just yet. If you look around me, even as we look up into the trees, they're barely whipping. I just looked at some of the observation data from the Tuscaloosa Regional Airport. Oh, look, right on cue. Thank you. The trees are behaving, working well for the live shot, showing those winds really beginning to blow. So far, the maximum gust we've seen here is 17 miles per hour. But as Wes was saying, those conditions are going to deteriorate over the next 24 hours. So if you want to get out a little walk before you wrap up your evening, this will be the time to do it with more wet weather in the forecast for tomorrow. Reporting, your meteorologist reporting in Tuscaloosa, Lauren Linnahan, WBRC 6 News on your side. Well, Wes, we actually got out of the storm tracker. We're at the park at Manderson Landing along the Black Warrior River, and we just missed it. A little boat came right by us called the Miss Morgan, but hey, we're always a child at heart. Did the little tug, and it sure beeped right back at us. So we love seeing that. Honestly, you can see most waves we've seen here on the Black Warrior River have just been because that boat came through. But we're actually beginning to see the winds picking up just a little bit here. It may not seem like much. The movement we're honestly seeing with the water is in the wake of that boat coming through. But I will tell you, honestly, you wouldn't know that there is a hurricane that just made landfall in Louisiana because it is so quiet here along the river. It's honestly very tranquil. We've only seen gusts today at about 17 miles per hour, but you can see how the river is moving just in the wake of that boat that just came through. It's just not quite as tranquil anymore. But we still got overcast skies here as we approach sunset, but we haven't even had a drop of rain yet. I just checked the radar, and the closest rain is about 35 miles away down the road in Utah. So we've got maybe about 2-3 hours here before we begin to see some sprinkles here in Tuscaloosa. So honestly, it's a really nice evening, cool, even though it's humid. That little bit of a breeze feels good, but that breeze is going to continue to pick up overnight. But what we're looking at as far as down the Black Warrior River, just really tranquil conditions. What I do want you to note weather-wise, actually, if you notice in the trees, if you look really closely, this is something I noticed in the storm tracker on the way down. This is not necessarily anything related to Hurricane Francine, but we are beginning to see some of the color already changing on the trees just a little bit. But hey, hurricane season, the peak of hurricane season occurs right as we're kicking off meteorological fall and headed towards astronomical fall in just a couple of weeks here, honestly less than 2 weeks. But I would say tonight, if you're in Tuscaloosa or really anywhere in central Alabama, just make sure before you go to bed that you make those preps, because even though the winds are honestly quite nice right now, the impacts are really going to be picking up here within the next 24 hours. And of course, we always want to be on guard for an isolated tornado threat as well. But this is truly the calm before the storm here in Tuscaloosa. But I imagine when we check back in with you tonight on First at 9, there should be some rain around. Maybe get to whip out our fancy new WBRC 6 news hoodie. So those will be nice to wear, getting the rain jacket out in the elements. But in the meantime, we'll check back in with you later. Meteorologist Lauren Linnahan in Tuscaloosa, WBRC News on your side. Yeah, Wes, it's a very different story, a 180 from what we're seeing on the coast right now with Hurricane Francine. I mentioned earlier I'm in Tuscaloosa at the landing at the park at Manderson Landing, and you'll notice behind me the Black Warrior River is quiet. It's so still. The only waves we've been seeing have been from a boat that just came by earlier, really the one lone boat out on the river tonight. But what I do want to note is that what we're seeing with Tuscaloosa for tomorrow with the forecast is there's actually expected to be some decent rainfall. Tuscaloosa being in West Alabama, west of that I-65 corridor, could get at least a good 2 to 3 inches of rain, possibly higher totals than that from Francine. So even though it won't necessarily be a hurricane by the time it gets here, when those rain bands, the outer rain bands, come in tonight within the next couple of hours, that's going to be starting a trend towards some beneficial rainfall. Here in Tuscaloosa, right along the Black Warrior River, we actually are at moderate drought conditions right now. And so the river, Tuscaloosa itself, West Alabama, Tuscaloosa County could really use some beneficial rainfall from Francine. And we're actually getting into that time of the year when the months are pretty dry. This is one of our driest times of the year here in Alabama, in the Birmingham metro and central Alabama. And one thing you almost hope for, as long as they don't cause any problems, the way to get beneficial rainfall, especially when you're in drought conditions, is to see a tropical system like like Francine coming through. So there are certainly some things we want to give you the first alert about, which of course we want to watch for localized flooding, also a wind threat, but also an isolated tornado threat tomorrow. But looking at the positive side of things, we really do need some beneficial rainfall. And if we get enough rainfall, we could see some rising levels here along the Warrior River. But we'll check back in with you tonight on First at 9. Yeah, Tania, you can see right here on the camera, we are finally getting some light rain falling here in Tuscaloosa, actually set up right now in front of Bryant-Denny Stadium at Saban Field. So this is the first rain we have seen, and we've been out here since about 3:30 this afternoon. But mainly it's just light rain right now. So honestly, the weather's still not too bad, but this is one of those first rain bands that is coming in from Francine, one of the outer rain bands. And I was just looking at First Alert AccuTrack before we went live here, and it's showing that even though this is light rain now, just to our south there is a rain band coming in with some more moderate rain. So if you're in and around the Tuscaloosa area, we do want to give you that first alert that there is going to be some slightly heavier rain moving in within the next 30 minutes. But all is still quiet here. One thing we have noticed since we checked in with you all earlier in the evening is that winds have been picking up a little bit. I just checked in with the Tuscaloosa Airport obs, and it was showing that at the latest observation, the highest gust was around 23 miles per hour. So that's still well below tropical storm force, but it's really going to be over the next 12 to 24 hours that we begin to see conditions really deteriorate. And even though technically by the time Francine gets here, it's not going to be a hurricane, it's still going to be having impacts, just like those impacts Tania was mentioning with the wind advisory in effect for tomorrow, heavier rain, and also an isolated tornado threat, which we're certainly no strangers here to tornadoes in Tuscaloosa. But definitely be mindful going into tomorrow that you have your rain gear. I'm certainly thankful for my rain jacket and nice new rain boots for tonight. Checking in with you in Tuscaloosa, your meteorologist Lauren Linnahan, WBRC 6 News on your side.